The film kicks off in Montenegro with a high-stakes mission. Peter Devereaux, a legendary ex-CIA operative known to his colleagues as the November Man for his ruthless efficiency, was working with his young protege, David Mason. The two were preparing to thwart the assassination of the American ambassador. The plan was a risky one. Peter was to act as a decoy, impersonating the ambassador at a public event, while Mason was in position as the sniper, ready to neutralize the hitman. As Mason was getting ready, he was caught in a moment of passion with a woman. His mentor, Peter, a man of few words, immediately warned him that this kind of distraction was a dangerous weakness for an agent in the field. Despite the warning, the mission was a go. The stakes were high, but things went sideways in a flash. Just as Mason had the assassin in his crosshairs, a little girl wandered into his line of sight. He froze, unable to pull the trigger. That single moment of hesitation cost them dearly, and the ambassador was gunned down. The failure created a deep rift between the two men, a mistake that would haunt them for years. 5 years later, we found Peter completely off the grid, living a quiet, unassuming life in Switzerland. He was a ghost to his former colleagues, a man who had left the spy game behind. But his peaceful existence was shattered when his old friend from the CIA, John Hanley, showed up on his doorstep. Hanley dropped a bombshell. 4 of their former agents had been murdered, and a vicious Russian hitman was responsible. All 4 agents had had a common thread, a past mission that was linked to Arkady Fedorov, a ruthless Russian politician on the fast track to the presidency. Peter wanted no part of it, telling Hanley he was retired and done with the spy world. But then Hanley showed him a photograph of a woman, a former CIA agent named Natalia Ulanova, who was now a top aide for Fedorov. Natalia was not just a colleague. She was a woman from Peter's past with whom he had had a deep relationship. Hanley revealed that Natalia had been living under deep cover for years and had gathered explosive information on Fedorov. She was willing to spill the beans, but only if the CIA extracted her safely from Russia. Hanley needed Peter's unique skills for the job. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Natalia was at a parliamentary event with Fedorov. As he gave a speech, she slipped away and headed to his office. She found a safe and broke into it, quickly grabbing a stack of photos of young women. It was the proof she needed, evidence of Fedorov's dark and sordid past. With the files in hand, Natalia made a mad dash for the extraction point. Several CIA agents, including Mason, were there to bring her in, monitoring her every move via a drone. But the clock was ticking. Fedorov discovered the break-in and immediately sent his special forces to intercept her. A high-speed, heart-pounding chase ensued through the city's chaotic streets. Natalia was at her wit's end, with nowhere to run, when out of nowhere, Peter arrived just in the nick of time. Peter's heroic rescue of Natalia was a fleeting victory. Their escape from the Russian kill squad was a masterclass in survival. But back at CIA headquarters, his actions were seen as a liability. The CIA's cold-blooded deputy director, Perry Weinstein, a man with a lot of secrets, ordered that Natalia be neutralized. He couldn't risk the Russians capturing her and exposing the agency's involvement. It was a brutal call, one that Hanley vehemently disagreed with, but Perry's word was law. It was revealed that Peter had gone to Moscow not on a mission, but as a man on a personal crusade to save the woman he had once loved. But their reunion was short-lived. She was shot in her vital point. In her final moments, she managed to give Peter the key to everything. The name of the woman in the photos she had stolen? It was Mira Filippova. Her dying words fueled a fire in Peter, a rage that was simmering just beneath the surface. He swore he would hunt down the person who killed her. Unbeknownst to him, the assassin was his own protege, Mason. When the two men finally crossed paths, it was a moment of pure, gut-wrenching tension. Peter, the master, and Mason, the student, stood face to face, but neither of them could pull the trigger. Their shared history and mutual respect for one another had them at a standstill. Back at the CIA embassy in Belgrade, a shaken Mason was at the receiving end of a brutal interrogation from Perry. Mason insisted that Peter was not a threat, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But Perry wasn't buying it. He had a different narrative entirely, painting Peter as a rogue agent on a revenge mission and a ticking time bomb who needed to be taken out. Mason, now with a new mission, was a man in a moral dilemma. He was ordered to hunt down and kill his own mentor. Peter was a man of his word, and he didn't waste any time. He went to Hanley's apartment to get information on Mira. He found 2 CIA agents there, trying to hack into Hanley's database, but Peter easily took them down. Peter knew that Mira held the key to Fedorov's deepest, darkest secrets. But Fedorov was no fool. He had hired a female assassin named Alexa to silence Mira for good. For the last 10 years, Mira had been living off the grid in Serbia, a ghost to everyone except for one person, a social worker named Alice Fournier. Peter used the credentials of the two agents he had just taken down to get the CIA to track Alice's location. A clever move that turned the agency's own resources against them. But Mason, his mind racing, had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. He knew his mentor's methods all too well and began to anticipate his every move. The hunt for Mira Filipova was on, and a reporter was on the same trail. He set up a lunch meeting with the social worker, Alice Fournier, hoping to get a lead on Fedorov's secrets. But an uninvited guest was already there. Alexa, the ruthless assassin, was in the restaurant, hiding in plain sight and disguised as a waitress. She approached Alice's table with a chilling smile and tried to lure her to a back room, a classic move to get her alone. But Peter had a sixth sense for trouble, and he arrived just in the nick of time, putting a stop to Alexa's plan. The situation went from bad to worse in a heartbeat as Mason and his team showed up, ready to move in. Surrounded on all sides, a less experienced agent would have been in a world of trouble, but Peter was a ghost in a suit, a man who could turn any situation to his advantage. A chaotic gunfight and a heart-pounding chase ensued, but Peter managed to get away with Alice in tow, despite being a pain in the butt at first. Mason was frantically trying to track Peter's phone, but he was getting nowhere. Peter was always 2 steps ahead of him. He had anticipated Mason's move and had hacked one of Mason's men's phones, turning it into a decoy. It was a classic misdirection play, and Mason and his team fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. The decoy phone led them on a wild goose chase to a parking garage, buying Peter precious time to make his escape. Meanwhile, Alexa, furious that her plan had been thwarted, decided to leave Alice alone and focus on her original target, the journalist who was meeting with Alice. Once they were safe, Peter cut straight to the chase and asked Alice about Mira Filipova. But Alice had bad news for him. She hadn't seen Mira in over a decade, and all of her records were gone, as if she had just vanished into thin air. Peter almost gave up, but then something on a wall caught his eye. It was a poster for a man named Denisov, a high-profile criminal who smuggled immigrant women into the country. Peter knew Denisov from a past conflict, and he knew that the man was a former military official who had a vast network of connections. Peter, never one to waste time, took Alice to a bustling nightclub to meet with Denisov. The two men had a shared history, and Peter didn't have to work too hard to get Denisov to talk. Denisov dropped a bombshell, revealing the real reason behind Fedorov's murderous rampage. Fedorov, a former Russian military commander, had discovered a massive oil-rich territory in Chechnya. To get his hands on it, he secretly conspired with the CIA to create a fabricated conflict. They made it look like the Chechnyan rebels were attacking Russian soldiers, a perfect excuse for both sides to invade and exploit the region's vast oil reserves. Meanwhile, back at the CIA, Hanley was on the hot seat. His former colleagues had him in a brutal interrogation, trying to figure out why he had sent Peter to rescue Natalia in the first place. They suspected he had gone rogue and was hiding something from the agency. At the same time, Perry Weinstein was manipulating his star agent, Mason. He told Mason that his failure to kill Peter was due to his hero worship of his former mentor. To break Mason's resolve, Perry handed him a USB drive containing a confidential report. Mason's blood ran cold when he read it. The report, written by Peter, stated that he had never seen Mason as a worthy protege and even advised the CIA not to recruit him. It was a vicious betrayal, and in his moral dilemma, Mason was filled with a blinding rage. Just then, a small kitten wandered into his apartment. He was forced to return it to its owner, a beautiful woman named Sarah. The two hit it off immediately and decided to spend the night together. But little did Mason know he was still being played. That same night, Peter and Alice had a temporary home in a ritzy apartment right across the street from Mason's. It was a clever move, always 2 steps ahead of his former protege. As Mason and Sarah were enjoying their time together, Peter quietly told Alice to get out of the city and go into hiding. With Alice out of the way, Peter got to work. The next morning, Mason awoke to an empty bed. His blood ran cold as he realized Sarah was gone. His panic went through the roof when he discovered all of his weapons, hidden in his room, had also vanished. A single note was left behind. It was Peter. He had not only found him, but he had taken Sarah as leverage. It was in this moment that David Mason had a gut-wrenching realization. Peter hadn't taken Sarah for revenge. It was a brutal, final lesson for his former protege. Peter had tried to teach him this lesson years ago, that an agent should never ever let personal feelings get in the way of a mission. The betrayal that Mason thought he had felt was nothing but a red herring, a way for Peter to get Mason to think and act like a real agent. At the same time, Hanley, still under brutal interrogation, revealed to his captors that the CIA's true purpose wasn't just to gather intelligence, it was to use that intelligence to manipulate and control world leaders, like Arkady Fedorov. On the other hand, while Peter was playing mind games with Mason, Alice decided to go against his orders and meet with the journalist. She was ready to spill the beans, to reveal about Mira, a former victim of Fedorov's. But her bravery was short-lived. Alexa, the cold-blooded assassin, appeared out of nowhere, determined to silence Alice once and for all. The assassin killed the journalist, and in a flash, Alice made a frantic escape. Back at his apartment, Mason was completely blinded by his rage and vowed to get his revenge on Peter. He was desperate to find a weakness, a chink in Peter's armor, and he finally found one. He discovered that Peter had a daughter, a secret he had kept from everyone, a daughter he had had with his former lover, Natalia. Mason immediately informed his superior, Perry, with a look of triumph on his face. Meanwhile, Peter had tracked Hanley to his secret location. He took down the guards with ease and confronted his old friend. Peter knew that Hanley was hiding something, and he wasn't about to leave without the truth. Hanley, cornered, finally admitted that the CIA was afraid that Natalia knew that Mira Filipova was a witness to their secret pact with Fedorov. He had sent Peter to save Natalia, but it had ended in tragedy. He also revealed that Mira had a secret of her own. She had been pretending to be deaf and mute for years, which had made Fedorov careless. He had left her alone thinking she couldn't hear him, and she had heard everything. Just then, the story took a shocking turn. Mason and his team, after running a background check, discovered that Alice Fournier's identity was fake. A biometric scan confirmed that she was none other than Mira Filipova, the very woman they had been looking for. Mira had been living under the nose of the CIA the whole time. Alice, or from this point on, Mira, went to see Denisov. She had a new plan to pose as a call girl and get close to Fedorov. She had been waiting for this moment for 10 years, and she was ready to get her revenge. Mira wasn't a woman to be trifled with. She was a woman on a personal crusade for revenge, and she wasn't about to let anything get in her way. Before getting intimate with Fedorov, she excused herself to the bathroom. Her plan was a ruthless one, to fashion a makeshift weapon from a broken mirror. As she worked, she was plagued by horrifying flashbacks of her past, a dark and brutal history that had haunted her for 10 years. She remembered with vivid clarity how Fedorov had mercilessly slaughtered her family and then kept her as a sex slave for 2 years. Unfortunately, Mira's assassination attempt went sideways in a heartbeat. Fedorov saw right through her ruse and quickly overpowered her, a chilling look of triumph on his face. Just in the nick of time, Peter showed up. He had used the information from Hanley to track Mira down, and he had a different plan entirely. He took down Fedorov's guards in a flash and told Mira that killing the man was a mistake. Instead, they needed to force Fedorov to confess to his conspiracy with the CIA. Peter used a brutal tactic to get Fedorov to talk. He held a gun to his head and played Russian roulette, a man with nothing to lose. The pressure was too much for Fedorov, and in a heart-pounding moment, he confessed to everything, revealing that his American contact was none other than Peter's trusted friend, Hanley. Just as they were about to get away, Mason and his team burst in. Chaos and gunfire filled the room as Peter told Mira to make a run for it. Peter and Mason faced off in a brutal, no-holds-barred fight in the engine room. Despite his age, Peter was a force of nature and easily overpowered his former protege. Before he left, Peter gave Mason a cell phone with Fedorov's full confession. Mason and his colleague Celia listened to the confession and were in a state of disbelief. They immediately went to Perry to report what they had found, but they found that Hanley had taken Perry's place. That night, Peter met Mira at a hotel and told her to get out of the country, but Mira was tired of running. She had a plan, and she wasn't about to back down. The next morning, Peter's phone rang. It was his daughter. A look of concern on his face, he answered it. But the voice on the other end was not his daughter's. It was Hanley. Hanley revealed that he had used the information Mason had given him to kidnap Peter's daughter. Hanley's ruthless actions had the full support of the CIA, who wanted to control Russia's next president. Peter lost his mind. Hanley gave him one last choice. If he wanted his daughter back, he would have to bring Mira to a specific location. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and Mira, with a heavy heart, was ready to sacrifice herself. She knew that her life was a small price to pay to save Peter's daughter, But Peter wouldn't hear of it. He had a different plan. He told Mira to take a train and disappear from their lives. If he and his daughter survived, they would find her. The plan was a risky one, but it was their only chance. Meanwhile, Hanley was basking in the glow of his success. The CIA had promoted him, a sign that his genius plan had worked perfectly. They were going to use Fedorov's sordid past to manipulate and control the future Russian president, a massive win for the CIA. But Hanley wasn't the only one playing games. Mason, who had a change of heart, was on a secret mission to save Peter's daughter. He was at a major crossroads and he knew he had to be careful. Mason and Celia were tasked with picking up Mira, but Mason had a different destination in mind. He used the location of the phone call from Hanley to find Peter's daughter. But Hanley wasn't a fool. He had eyes everywhere, and Mason had to eliminate Hanley's men first. He was in a world of trouble, but he was a man on a mission. He stormed the building, taking down every guard in his path, and finally reaching Peter's daughter. At the same time, Mira had a new plan. Instead of taking the train, she decided to get her revenge. She went to an internet cafe and started emailing evidence of Fedorov's crimes to the media. But in a moment of carelessness, she used her credit card, and Alexa, the vicious assassin, found her. A heart-pounding chase ensued, but Mira had a newfound strength. She fought back with everything she had and defeated Alexa. She then sent the emails, a final act of defiance. In a dramatic climax, Mason secured Peter's daughter and confronted Hanley, a look of triumph on his face. He had finally redeemed himself by helping his mentor. In the end, Peter got his daughter back, and the two rushed to the train station to find Mira. A few months later, Peter and Mira were seen at an international court, testifying about the CIA's and Fedorov's conspiracy, which led to the Chechnya War. Fedorov was removed from the presidential race but managed to escape thanks to his connection. His luck, however, ran out. He was found dead, the victim of a bullet from an unknown assassin.